Bengals drop one to the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk about the Bengals rest of the season coming up next on the Wincinnati podcast.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm Ace.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals and Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still gonna give you the same AJ.
I'm gonna work as hard as I can to be the best.
I've been working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I gotta get your top 5 receivers.
Better, man.
It was good. Watch out for us.
Welcome, people, to the Wincinnati podcast. I am Ace. He is Zim. We are coming to you guys live here Tuesday night as we're recording this. A lot of moving around. I actually had to go out of town for my wife's birthday. Unfortunately, had to see what happened to the Bengals. Definitely a tough fought game for the Bengals. However, they came up short. We'll talk a little bit about that game, but we'll also kind of think about moving forward, kind of the Browns week, kind of where the rest of the season goes. But Zim, what were your thoughts just like on the game itself? Because I don't know about you, but for me, I just felt super confident at the beginning and really thought the Bengals were going to end up pulling off the upset. But then it's just like they kind of flatline. They kind of just flatline and never really recovered after that. But what were your thoughts, bro?
Football is such a delicate, such a fragile, such a beautiful creature. Sometimes, you get the best of the best, and, it's almost like, I don't know, like maybe like a dog or something. You get the best of the best, and it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to you. Sometimes when you lose some games or whatever, important games like that might be the equivalent of the dog ripping up your couch. We're literally on the couch as we speak. But, it's so crazy. I haven't rewatched it in its entirety, but just if so many small parts of the season just reared its ugly head throughout this game. But the 4th and 1, I'm not mad at them going for the 4th and 1. I know a lot of players were kind of vocal about it. I'm going to ask you, how did you feel about the 4th and 1? Mm-hmm. But I thought the 4th and 1 was so it draws a lot of parallels with the season. Zach calls a really good game plan for the most part. I thought what he did in the first half was phenomenal. Getting Jake Brown in, it's like that was Jake Brown that we saw in preseason. Then you get in the spot, and they had a chance to go up 11, 24-13 if they score a touchdown right there with 7 minutes left. And the Chiefs had their struggles throughout the game too. And you just think about it like, bro, you could go up 24-13 and pretty much put a knife in them. And we're talking about the Bengals now with the Browns. After we saw the Ravens win, the Browns probably resting all their starters next week. Had you converted that 4th and 1, you're probably going to the playoffs. And literally, you don't get the 4th and 1. They come back on 3rd and 4, the Chiefs, from their 10-yard line and throw a 40-yard pass to a tight end. None other than the tight end that's killed us all season. So you had good Bengals football, good game plan, Zach football. Then you had, why didn't you check out of that play? Why was that the play, Zach football, whether that's Browning fault or whatever? Then you had the defense giving up a big play. And once they converted that 4th down, I watched the game with my son. That 3rd and 4. And that 40-yard pass, I gave him this look, and I was just like, don't like that. See, them kicking the field goal at that point, it gives them a 7-point lead, but I don't think that that's enough with Mahomes possibly going to the end of the game. A lot of people crying about the calls, don't like the calls. You think that you up 7 at their house, that's not enough for me. You got to go up on them. How did you feel about that call?
I like the decision to go for it. Hated the play call. I mean, we watched Joe Mixon pretty much run into a wall, multiple times in that game. For that to be the play call after it wasn't working at all was just frustrating, I'll say. And then I wanted them to go for it. So I understand people saying take the 3 or whatever, but I felt like they should have gone for it, but the execution just wasn't good, and there's been situations where that's happened before with this staff where it's like, okay, I want you to go for it, but why did you call that? Or why on 4th and inches did you go into a shotgun kind of formation? And I think, like you said, it's some of the things that we've dealt with this season that just reared their ugly heads. And I think the thing that hurts the most is kind of like what you said. Well, I'm not going to say hurt because the Bengals were playing with house money, right? The season was supposed to be over. Like, I was still positive and felt like they had a chance, but it's just like knowing that the Browns were going to sit their starters next week and all we had to do was win. Like, it was tough. Now, it still would have been a tough accomplishment for us to pull off because the Steelers start beating the Seahawks. They ended up beating them. So I'm literally watching both of those games at the same time. There's one to my right, that's the Seahawks and Steelers. Then there's one to my left, that's the Bengals. And it just seemed like once that 3rd and 4 that you're talking about happened, it's just like both games flip-flop to like the Bengals aren't making the playoffs, or it started to shift that way because
I saw that score at the bottom of my screen. Even my son said, "Oh, the Steelers are winning," because weren't they down at? Weren't they down at the beginning? Yeah,
they were, and then they went up multiple scores, and it was like, honestly, it was like Seattle and our offense just died and just like stopped doing anything, and the other team just took advantage. So, the one thing I'll say is they went into Arrowhead against the Chiefs and still, fought it out. But I do feel like some of those decisions that they could have made, I feel like you said, if they go up by 13 or 11, whatever it was, the 2 scores, I think it's over for Kansas City because Kansas City they had players fighting each other on the sideline. Like, I think it just puts them in a whole completely different space mentally with that. And I just think that the Bengals never recovered from that. Like, if I'm not mistaken, did we score after that? Like after, I don't think they scored after that.
We didn't score the entire second half. In fact, the only time that we got past the 50 is that 3rd and like 27 or whatever, that 4th down conversion that we threw to T. Huddy at the end of the game. We didn't even get across. So all good teams make their adjustments. We've seen Lou Anarumo make all these adjustments to the Chiefs over the years. And
I pulled the Bengals on us. They did what we did to them in the second half on us.
So that and that was one of the things too. I don't know. A lot of times I get on the internet and I don't see other teams showing respect to the Bengals at all. But I think that we're leaders in our own right, and I think we kind of move at our own heartbeat. And I don't agree with those calls, and I don't know. I don't really have that much to say about those calls. So if people don't, I saw a couple people talking about the refs and stuff.
You talking about with the refs? You talking about with the refs? Like
with the refs, like.
Yeah, I mean, the intentional grounding was a little crazy. Like
the intentional grounding
was very nasty, man. I was like, what are we?
But you know what was last year was nasty. The intentional grounding last year in the AFC Championship game, that was nasty.
Yeah,
I know that when we go to these games, especially playing on the road and going to that place, you're not going to get those calls.
You're not going to get calls.
And the Cincinnati Bengals. Partially, it's a deep-rooted thing. I've watched all of these teams. They all click up to hate on the Bengals. Like, the Ravens are going to play the Steelers all week, this upcoming week. Do you think, even if the Ravens are to bounce the Steelers out of the playoffs, the Ravens and the Steelers, or at least the Ravens, are still going to come back to the Bengals because they hate the Bengals that much? They're not even going to talk. Like, for 5 minutes, y'all got to watch how all these people move. They link up together to strategically take out the Bengals every chance that they get. And people say, oh, you trying to be like a victim. Like, just observe. Just watch them. They all have like this thing. So when I go into games like that, I'm not expecting calls, none of that stuff, because I feel like all that stuff moves, like it kind of all.
And that's the thing, Zim. Like, you just hit on it. Like, a lot of people's favorite buzzword for Bengals is you guys are victims. When you hear us on here, do we ever talk about the refs? We never are up here being like, yeah, the refs. We just always say we shouldn't have even put it to a situation to where the game can be decided by the refs.
Right. And the one thing that I wanted to do, and I kind of got a little old track, but the one thing I wanted to do is I'm going to be the bigger person. I don't like the way that people talk or communicate with us on Twitter or whatever, but we have the platform to say what's really in our heart. I do want to commend the Chiefs for having a really good defense this year and being able to make those adjustments to what I thought the Bengals should. I came into that game, like you said at the beginning of the show, I thought we was going to win the game. I didn't think – I thought the Chiefs are an above average team. You get Mahomes on there, it makes them a good team. I don't think that they're a Super Bowl contender this year in my mind. And I thought the things that the Bengals could do in that game, they did early in that game. And I was so excited to see that. My fantasy football team was excited to see Joe Mixon get catches and different things like that. But the second half adjustments of the Chiefs, you got to tip your hat to that and don't do what those teams do to us. And that's the one thing that is one takeaway that I did want to kind of highlight. As much as there was stuff that the Bengals could do, I do want to give credit to the Chiefs to making plays where they weren't, like they had to go make plays. They did the same thing in the AFC Championship game last year. Like they came back.
They did that same. And
when the going got tough, their defensive line went and got after it, and they did exactly what our defensive line doesn't do. Now, our defensive line did do that in the Colts game, where Trey Hendrickson at the end of the game gets himself in a good spot where you're forcing them to throw, and then we go ahead and we unleash the hounds on them boys, and that's what the Bengals have to do. And we're gonna have so much time to talk about what the Bengals are gonna do for. I did want to talk about this game more, but that to me showed me like you have to put your team in a position to have your best player like a Trey Hendrickson in a pass rushing situation at the end of the game. And if you fail to do that, you're not doing enough, because that's the strength of your defensive line. So then later on, we're like, man, how come Cam Sample and how come such and such to get up? Because that's not the strength of your line for real. And I'm looking for the Trey Hendrickson, and I'm looking for all them boys to step up. But the Bengals got to put themselves in that spot so that those dudes can go take the game by the horns. And I just, remember we had that AJ Green interview one time, and I said, man, I wish y'all at the end of the game, I said this towards the end of the interview, I said, man, I wish y'all would just go and take some of them wins and stop playing conservative and doing all these different things. And I do like the fourth down decision, and I like different things that they did, but we got a lot of evaluating to do, partner.
Yeah, man, it's definitely a lot of evaluating, but I have to agree with you too, man. I have to go back and watch the all 22. But whatever they did in the second half defensively, you hit the nail on the head, bro. It was like the Bengals couldn't do anything. It's like Jake Browning didn't know where stuff was coming from. The offensive line wasn't blocking. And you kind of mentioned they did what they did last year, which is their strategy was doubling Jamar and T on the outside. And for me, it was disappointing to see that the Bengals staff didn't have an answer for it. They didn't have an answer for it last year.
Tyler Boyd? Where was Tyler Boyd when that happens, bro?
I don't know, man. Like I said, I got to go back and watch the 22, but they just didn't have any answers for it. And to see them knowing that ended their season last year and to not have something to combat that this season, just, I don't know. It's like the staff has to do a better job. Now, I get it. I'm not just putting this on the staff, but you got to have an answer for that, man. Because if that's the case, what stops the next team from doing that? The NFL is a copycat league, right? If you don't have an answer for this next season, now obviously when you have Burrow, there's different things that you can do against that. But I just expected them to have more. Like, where was Yoshi at? Where was Trenton Irwin? Where were these other guys that were literally drafted for that situation, right? Like we didn't really see it. So, that was disappointing for me. I do agree with you in terms of, so like, even though I will give the Chiefs their credit, I do not think that they're a Super Bowl contender. I think I was holding out for a while, still saying like it's still KC, it's still Pat Mahomes, but I feel like we still waiting and watching that team really just have a field goal fest more than scoring touchdowns on a Bengals defense that's been susceptible. They really didn't wow me as a team that was that much better than the Bengals without Joe Burrow. Now, I'm not trying to like trash them. I'm just giving y'all my honest opinion. Like from what we saw our ops Baltimore do, like, and what I just saw from the Chiefs, I don't know if they could beat Baltimore and Baltimore with how they played on Sunday. So that's how you know
scary, which is scary for me, because I'm gonna tell you right now, y'all. I hate it, but the Browns and the Ravens.
The Browns and the
like,
Ravens are some of the best teams in the NFL.
The Browns and the
which is crazy.
They're some of the best teams in the NFL, let alone the AFC. Now, I won't go on Twitter and tell them that because they're just weird. But if I'm having a heart-to-heart, I feel like there's a lot of Cincinnati in the house. So I hate it. It sucks. But the one thing that
lose though, don't get it twisted. I still hope.
Oh, more than life itself, bro. I will grab it. Hey, look, if Pat Mahomes play one of them dudes coming up, I'm grabbing. I will grab Chiefs pom poms before I go and root for them.
Facts, big facts.
I'm gonna tell you another team. I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm a big Texans fan in this playoff. I thought about this all weekend, bro. Once we went out, I said, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" And I said, "Bro, I will be more comfortable with the Texans. I will be even more comfortable with the Steelers because I at least I don't know the which sounds insane because I hate the Steelers. But the Browns and the Ravens are two teams I cannot live with on social media at all talking to me. I'm sorry. I will go for the Chiefs. I will grab pom-poms for whatever team y'all want me to do. But
that's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be though. Like when we went to the bowl, it was weird when it was like Steelers fans cheering for us. I'm like, that's weird. What are you doing? Like, what are we doing out here? Like, you're not supposed to cheer for the ops, but at the same time, you can keep it a buck. But yeah, we do not want them to win. Obviously, stuff still has to happen too. Anything can happen. Stuff has to play.
Anything can happen. We learned that with Joe Burrow. Anything can happen. So for sure, we see this as a week-to-week league. A lot of good teams too. A lot of good teams. Now I credit Flacco for doing what he's doing and everything like that. And I think he'll be fine. And I said this when they got him, and this on Twitter and everything. I said Joe Flacco gonna win them a lot of games and take them to the playoffs. The minute it came on the timeline, because their defense is that good to me. But one thing that makes the Bengals so special to me is that under no circumstances, say that the defense gives up a play, say that something doesn't go your way, you always got Joe Burrow to kind of bring you back in some of those scenarios. A lot of these teams that look really good in the regular season, if that quarterback doesn't play at that level, they all get exposed in the playoffs. That's what happens to the Titans every year. That's what's happened to the Ravens all these years. So don't just think just because currently right now the Ravens look like the toast of the town. We do not know until we get into these playoffs and you're playing the best defenses in football and you're playing the best offenses in football and you're forced to respond.
And the playoff environment is completely different. Like everything is more intense. You can't have all it takes is for one of those, 3 interception games that could end your whole season. So playoff football is completely different. It's win or go home. Whoever gets that dub at the end of the day moves on. Got a super chat here from Dustin Croft. He says every team with massive quarterback contracts are struggling except the Ravens. Flash forward 15 years from now, we will see this as a flawed NFL strategy. You could also throw the Browns in there unless you're just saying, like, since Deshaun isn't playing, they're not doing anything. But I don't know if it's flawed per se. I just think that there were a lot of injuries at the quarterback position this year where you saw guys like Aaron Rodgers go down, Justin Herbert. So I wouldn't say – I think, if anything, it proves how important those guys are, right? Like, with us not having Burrow – as good as the team was, it still wasn't good enough to get us into the playoffs and make that run. And I think the teams that you're looking at right now, I personally think the team that's going to win, it's not going to be, in my opinion, one of the teams with a backup quarterback. I think it'll be one of those teams with the starter there. We'll see how that shakes out. But I wouldn't say it's a flawed strategy. I think it's a flawed strategy if you pick the wrong quarterback. If you pick the right guy, I think it's just typical business. What about you, Zim? You think this is a flawed NFL strategy paying quarterbacks?
Nah, it's a double-edged sword. You need quarterback play to elevate you in the playoffs. There's no way around it. Whether that's a backup in Joe Flacco or whether that's going to end up being maybe a hurt Trevor Lawrence or whatever. I don't know how this thing going to go. But I'll put my money on the CJ Strouds in a playoff atmosphere, do or die scenario, more so than these teams that like that don't have that. And that, but the name of the game, this is the double-edged sword part of it. It's so tough. We've only seen four quarterbacks in the entire AFC conference go all the way through this season without missing like multiple games. Only 4. And that's insane. So the marathon is like really crazy right now with that extra game. You got so many, like you got these defensive guys that are getting faster, bigger, stronger, all these different things that are going on. It's so tough to make it all the way through. And once you make it through, yeah, like Lamar and them are in the driver's seat because now you got, top-notch quarterback play that made it all the way through. So you were able to reap the benefits of the regular season. And then you got that top-notch player to go and, play those big, meaningful games in the playoffs too. So if you can get through, you got to get one of those guys, though, or the quarterback that you have, like the Joe Flacco of the world, has to sustain that level or it's all for nothing.
Right. No, I agree. Here is some breaking news that just happened. Might be pertinent to Bengals fans, especially now with them having the 16th pick in the draft. Brock Bowers is official. He has declared for the NFL draft. So he is expected to be a part of that pool. Are we looking at, what are we evaluating in the Browns game? Because obviously this kind of puts us into the mode where you're thinking about the draft, you're thinking about the offseason as far as Tyler Boyd's possible last game could be this one against the Browns. What are some of the things that you're kind of looking towards evaluation-wise and draft-wise, like bowl games? Are you watching those? Like, what do you have your thoughts on in terms of the Bengals offseason?
In that Chiefs game, the Bengals ran 24 times, I think, in the first half or something crazy like that. I was looking at this afterwards. Also, the Bengals have been 18-0 with a 10-point lead. What we learned when Joe Burrow has been out is that a more balanced attack, as we've been saying, me and you've been saying all along, has been one of the things that's going to fuel this team to move forward and win games. In this game against the Browns, I don't care who they sit because they didn't give a damn who we set. Well, we set people in 2021. I want all the starters, including Jamar Chase. I want all of them to play. And I want every single person out there going out there to play as hard as they possibly can to act like it's a playoff game. That's me personally. I know that people will say, well, if you lose, you might could get the number 12 pick versus the number, to me, it's a little bit like I might like we lose. I'm like, cool, whatever. But I'm more interested in not going 0-6 in the division for bragging rights. I need to be able to say, what is my game plan? What's my strategy moving forward playing the Browns? Because the Browns, to me, are the worst matchup in the AFC North for us, period. I need to go into this game, whether that's more Yoshi snaps in there, mixed in there too, more is that more snaps? Like last week, they only let DJ Turner play 7 snaps in the whole entire game. Is that allowing DJ Turner to play? I need to know what is a strategy that I could take and move forward with. And that's, to me, is like the biggest thing that I need to get out of this Browns game, whether it's win, lose, or draw. If they got backups in, maybe their plan is way more simplified. I don't care. I'm going directly at them, and I'm playing. I'm gonna treat this game as though if Joe Burrow was there. Why am I doing that? That's exactly what they did to us in 2021. They played every single starter, Nick Chubb, all them dudes included. I'm gonna let Joe Mixon go get his 77 yards and be a 1,000-yard rusher. I'm gonna do everything that I don't care. If we go up 10, 20 points, I ain't letting my foot off the gas. I'm stomping them. I don't care. I'm with all that. And that's where I want to go with this game, bro. Like, I'm not treating this game as it's a throwaway. I get it, the ramifications or you're not in the playoffs or whatever, but if I'm the Bengals, I'm treating this thing like I'm trying to stomp them out. I don't care who's out there. If they don't like, if they're down by 10, 20 points or something like that, come bring some starters in here and let them get messed up. Let them get hit too. I'm with all of that. I want all that smoke.
No, I'm with you. I feel kind of the same way. I mean, however this thing ends is the way it's meant to be. I don't feel like there's much of a difference between top 12 and top 16. I feel like you'll still be able to get some pretty decent players. But I do think, going 0-6 in the division is a little nasty. Going home, losing to the Browns for the last game of the season while they're getting ready to go into the playoffs is a little nasty. I don't know if I'm a Bengals player, if I want that sour end to the season, man. Like that's not where it's at. But I kind of did start snooping around. Like I've never looked at any mock drafts up until Sunday I was on the West Coast, so it was like 4 o'clock that time, Las Vegas time. That's the first time I ever looked at a mock draft or anything. I wasn't even thinking. I don't know none of the players. I don't know like anybody except Brock Bowers for real and O'Dunn's. I think you tweeted that's the first time I seen him was like
Doomsday.
last night, like Doomsday. Like that was the first time I seen him. So for me, man, I think it's just no matter where they are at in the draft. I think that the trenches are going to be, and I'm not the first person to say this, and I'm not going to be the only person to say this, but the trenches from an evaluation standpoint is what I'm going to be looking at, man. The way that Joe Mixon just had nowhere to run, and it's been like that all season, I can't sign up for that again. I don't know if that's a coaching thing. I don't know if that's a personnel thing. But, the trenches on both sides of the ball, I feel like it's something that I'm going to be looking into this offseason. But then you also had the skilled players out there. So it's a dope time to kind of get into, even though as we're recording, this is after the first round of the college football playoff. But I would just recommend, looking at some of these players in the national championship and figuring out, which of these players could possibly help the Bengals, right? Because even as much as we hate Michigan, Dax Hill went to Michigan, DJ Turner went to Michigan. They might have somebody else out there that we can look at. But it's evaluation mode, man. It was a fun evaluation mode when we first started this when 9 went down because I kind of got out of evaluation mode. But now we're back to this. I hope that they can get that victory over the Browns. But was there anything that you wanted to talk about before we go to our friends at Midwest?
I was gonna say, I just started calling him Doomsday. I just think that's the coolest nickname of all time, and he needs to make shirts for that. If he's not a Bengal, then I need to reach out. Doomsday is like crazy. All right, but anyway, I wasn't saying that that's the guy that I want, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, here you go, talking that wide receiver stuff." I wasn't saying that because I'm gonna tell you. Yeah, I was like, here we go.
Your history with weapons, man. You can't tweet stuff like that.
Hey, Civil War Part 3. We get content.
They sound like a Zim shirt, man. That sound like.
Hey, look, we get our content and we getting our merch together. But I will say this though, no stone will be left unturned this all season for me. I'm walking out of that. I'm walking out of that draft. I'm gonna ring somebody by their neck. If I don't walk out of that draft with a minimum 2 defensive linemen and 2 offensive linemen, I will punch somebody if they don't come out of that draft with that. Now, does it have to be in the first round? This is how we ended up with Civil War, with the Panay Sewell and Chase one. Is it second round? Is it fifth round? I don't know. But I know I'm walking out of that draft with trenches.
One of the nastiest things I said during that time was when I was like, I'm drafting 3 offensive linemen in a row.
In a row. That's the backstory on how Civil War started. Me and Ace were getting off of his show, and he said, I'm drafting 3 offensive line, round 1, 2, and 3. I said, yeah, we need to talk about this. So now moving forward, it's a world that we could draft rounds 1 through 3, and I don't know if you go to a Super Bowl, but maybe Joe Burrow isn't hit as much, and maybe I don't know. But that's the great thing about the evaluation period, and I think that when we go to the draft, we're gonna get information from this Browns game, whatever, do a little bit more intel. When we go to this draft, though, I'm gonna be putting a lot of pressure on the Bengals through social media to go and spend money on the trenches before I even go to the draft. It could be low-level guys like Maurice Hurst. It could be Shelby Harris's of the world. But that defensive line room better be stacked with some old dogs, some semi-old dogs, and I need that room together. And maybe Reader on a 1-year deal, I tried to reach out to bro, everything. But all these different things have to be, you know, like I think we know that. So and when you do that,
you gonna reach out to Chris Jones.
I'm gonna reach out to Christopher. I've been putting a lot of Chris stuff out there in the atmosphere. We're gonna have to talk to Orlando Brown when the season is over. We're gonna have to get Chris. Me and Chris gotta make amends for what happened on Twitter first. But I think once he gets up, I think that will be one of our best interviews, and I'm gonna speak that into existence. But there's a lot of work to be done. But I want to put pressure on the front office to go and fulfill some of these needs in the trenches before I even go to the draft, so that I can even look at a wide receiver. Like, you know, say you don't get, say Boyd walk and then T is on a tag and trade. Y'all don't think I'm about to be looking at wide receivers? I'm 100. If I go get a first for T Higgins and I got 2 firsts, I'm 1,000% coming back with a doomsday, and I'm about to run it. I'm about to go crazy. Charlie Jones ain't show me enough to do anything. So I ain't thinking about him at all. Yoshi, they limit his snaps. Why they do that? They know wide receivers. So maybe we're high on Yoshi and the staff ain't as high. I'm 1,000% looking at wide receivers, but don't get it twisted. I understand the trenches is like that's where we're struggling right now, and that is the focus.
For sure. Well, with that being said, let's toss it to our friends at Midwest Best Barbecue.
Wings and them CTVs. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. It's the AC to the Zim, M into the B's. Uno wings, Jeep on wings, and them CTVs. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. Say what up to Jordan Battle. We be going to battle. Intercepting balls like CTV did on Seattle. Putting 6 up on AZ. Juice gang amazing. Make sure you come get these wings, cause then we stay blazing. And T game be smooth as ice. Your mom making DBs fold. TV got big levels, and now you already know. It's so pretty for Uno wings. Cam got the new wings. We call them CTBs. Only at MBs. H to the Zim, M into the B's.
Out to Midwest Best Barbecue. That's a little snippet of the new commercial, but shout out to Tim and the folks over at Midwest
the CTBs over at MBs. This boys, he's spitting. And that's a bar. We got them CTBs over there, MBs. Hey, bro, Aaron, let's ride out. Let's go. Let's ride out in the car. Let's go ride out.
Shout out to them. We're going to ride out the 669 Justice Court in Loveland, Ohio. Y'all definitely will want to do the same. They got the Uno wings. They got the CTB wings. They got the it's the place for the queue. Listen to the song. He telling you what the order in the song. So make sure you guys hit them up. Midwest Best Barbecue. Amazing people, amazing food, diehard Bengals fans. So definitely stop in there and let them know Ace and Zim sent you. With that being said, Zim, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
So much to talk about, very little time. We had a space earlier. I did one quickly. It's just so much to unpackage, man. When you got such high expectations for a team coming into the season, we're talking top 5 roster. I think the loss of Burrow showed us that I think it's barely top 10. You know, like if I'm being honest. And, you know, so much expectations for this team. There's so many conversations to be had. I want to applaud everybody for like not doing a lot of the weird stuff that I think a lot of teams do to us and take away when we do. Now, I will say this. When they do lose, I will light them up, and I'm gonna cook the feathers off of any flocky or whatever on Twitter. Like, make no mistake out of it. But I'm gonna play it cool. We're gonna watch how this thing unfolds. Take notes. If it's something good that you see another team doing, we're gonna take them notes, and we're gonna figure out how the hell did we go 0-5 or hopefully 1-5 in the AFC North, and then, you know, kind of evaluate and, you know, go from there. But we got an interesting, one of the biggest all seasons in the history of Cincinnati Bengals, like, sports, and I'm very excited about that. I'm very disappointed at how that season ended, especially with high hopes. I just don't think that we're that far away, but I'm not going to do the woulda, coulda, shoulda, with Joe. I thought that they strung together some good games and they had enough. And as I illustrated, as I started out on the 4th and 1, you go get that 4th and 1, you might be in the playoffs, like just off that. So it's really close to how, how you got to the spot. You might have did that and gone 4. You would be talking about 4 and 2 with Jake Browning. In the whole season, you'd be looking at so different if you just convert like that 4th and 1. And that's why all the thoughts can't be so radical. Is like, I get it, we're all want to win, but just kind of pump your brakes on some of this stuff. It's okay to be very critical. I'm gonna be very critical on the front office. They better spend this money and they better evaluate and get better, like you pointed out in the run game, all these different things. We're gonna go through it, but at the same time, let's not lose sight of this team is good enough to win with Burrow there. But it is what it is. We're gonna see how it goes.
We're going to see how it goes, so stay tuned. We're going to be bringing you guys all of that content. Don't forget, we provide some of the best offseason content out here. We've had Civil Wars. We've had, cap, free agency, all kind of stuff. So don't worry, Wincinnati is not going anywhere. We'll be diving into all of that. But make sure that you guys follow us on Twitter at Zimhude, at New Stripe City, and at the Wincinnati Pod. We'll see you guys soon.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm Ace.
We got a special show, as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still going to give you the same AJ.
I'm going to work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I gotta get your top 5 receiver.
Better, man. Good. Watch out for us.